The first sit-in took place in Greensboro, North Carolina. Four African-American kids, Joseph McNeil, Franklin McLean, David Richmond, and Ezel Blair Jr., sat in a restaurant February 1st, 1960. Tensions rose as citizens saw this as a crime, that these kids with dark skin were sitting in the restaurant. In response, the manager, C.L. Harris, said, "They can just sit there. It is nothing to me." More people heard about the news, causing the next day to be filled with large groups of students coming to the store to sit in. The story caught air and traveled to other places outside of Greensboro, where only in 2 weeks there were already sit-ins taking place in 11 cities. About 70,000 people participated in the sit-ins that occurred. At first, the protests were peaceful, but on February 27, 1960, they turned violent. As a group of white teenagers attacked the sit-in participants in Nashville, the police department who responded to the call did not stop the white kids who attacked, but arrested the participants for disorderly conduct. On that day, Nashville police arrested approximately 81 students. As the students sat in jail, they refused the offer of bail money, believing in serving their jail time. In the end, more than 3,000 people were arrested due to the protests. When Northern students heard of the movement, they decided to help their Southern counterparts by picketing branches of stores that were segregated in the South. Martin Smolin, a Columbia student who led picketing at Woolsworth, explained, "People have asked me why Northerners, especially white people, who have been in the majority in our picketing demonstrations in New York, take an active part in an issue which doesn't concern them. My answer is that injustice anywhere is everybody's concern." And when a reporter asked Congressman Adam Clayton Powell of Harlem if he was advocating that black people in New York stay out of a national chain stores, such as Woolsworth, he answered, "Oh no, I'm advocating that American citizens interested in democracy stay out of the stores." Sit-ins, however, weren't over. By August, 70,000 people had participated in them, and they generated over 3,000 arrests. They continued in some areas of the South until and even after the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, declared segregation at lunch counters unlawful. In addition, the technique of sit-ins was used to integrate other public facilities, such as movie theaters and SNCC, the student group that rose out of the sit-ins, continued to be involved in the civil rights movement for many years. Perhaps most importantly, the sit-ins marked a change in the civil rights movement for many years. In the words of journalist Louis Larnach's The Marketplace, they showed that non-violent direct action and youth could be very useful weapons in the war against segregation. Martin Luther King Jr. described the sit-ins as an electrifying movement of African-American children that shattered the placid surface of campuses and committees across the South. By the end of the first month, sit-ins had taken place at more than 30 locations in 7 states, with over 50,000 students had participated. Nonviolence was a central component of the student-led demonstrations. Although they were meant to be peaceful, protesters were not met with peace from the public. Protesters were routinely halted and beaten by segregationists and arrested by police, but their determination was undying. NAACP leaders gave public support to the sit-ins, although some people questioned the usefulness of student-led civil disobedience. On April 16th, the 4 leaders of the Warriors sit-in campaigns gathered at a conference called by Southern Christian Leaders Conference. The meetings at the SCLC became the Conference at the Sit-in Movement. 120 students representing 12 southern states needed to establish a youth-centered organization with any formal affiliation with any other civil rights group. In October, Atlanta students convinced Martin Luther King Jr. to participate in a sit-in at a local department store. King, along with 300 students, were arrested. The students were released, but King remained in jail. President John F. Kennedy helped release King. In 1960, there were signs that the Southern civil rights movement that were transformed by the fiercely independent student protest movement. Those who participated in the sit-ins were determined to continue protests for equality. The Greensboro News was the first to cover the sit-ins, running their story on the front page. Other newspapers around the country would either cover the story on the back pages or not at all. The sit-ins were not covered at first, but then were when the media decided to leading up to the national protests. After realizing that Greensboro was covering the topic on the front pages, other news stations arrived. On February 3rd, the New York Times ran an article about the sit-ins sparking the topic across the nation, causing Greensboro and sit-ins to become more and more popular. Woolsworth, who refused to serve the 4 African-American boys, gave in after losing $150,000 in the business that he lost. The restaurant Woolsworth served its first African-American customers at the lunch counter on July 25, 1960.